Hi, welcome to tonight's live stream where we dive deep into why sequencing matters for your retirement withdrawals. So one of the things we're going to explore tonight is the chain reaction of events that occurs when you withdraw money from either your retirement account, your IRA, your 401k, your non-qualified accounts, your non-IRAs, and of course you have the Roth, or you maybe will have a Roth, your tax-free account. So those decisions, as we lay them out, and then understand how sequencing impacts other aspects of your retirement in regards to the withdrawals. We're going to get into that. We're going to take your questions tonight. We want to make this as interactive as possible. And tonight we have Mr. Ed Rossi with us, certified financial planner professional, certified private wealth advisor. Ed, how are you?
Doing fantastic.
Good.
Good to be here again. Thank you.
Good. You were here last month, right?
No, that was Nicole and no, I'm kidding. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Has it been a while?
It has been a while.
Okay, so I think Nicole and Lizzie were here last month.
Last month, correct.
Were you not here the month before that?
I think that was Chris and Charles again.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Seems like I must just talk to you every day. Yeah. So, and then we have Eric Nguyen, also certified financial planner professional. Eric has a tremendous amount of expertise in this topic, as well does Ed. So really, really excited for what we're going to be getting into tonight. And it's the $1 million question, really. You enter the retirement phase, your paycheck stop, so you have to decide which account are you going to withdraw from and create your first retirement paycheck. So Ed, why does this matter?
Oh gosh, where to start? It is not as simple as people think, or it's easy to go the path of least resistance. I think it's natural to go that way. I'm going to go back 10 years, we would espouse just go with what we now call conventional wisdom. Take from the taxable accounts first, let the tax-deferred account continue to grow, let the tax-free account continue to grow, and then tap into those in that particular order. But now with taxation, the type of planning that we can do here and such, it's much more detailed, as it should be, because the whole goal is to, we like to say in the tax planning side of things, we all want to pay our fair share of taxes. We all want to be good citizens. We don't want to be great citizens when it comes to paying taxes.
You don't want to pay your share plus your neighbor's share.
And then so on and so on.
And ultimately you want to pay what you owe, but
absolutely,
if you can strategically over time make good decisions, which keeps more money in your pocket and less money in the tax side of the ledger, well, why not?
And it also it has a domino effect. It not only decreases maybe over the time of your retirement, how much you're paying in taxes, but that has a domino effect as far as the success of your retirement. Mm-hmm. It has a domino effect on maybe you don't need to be taking as much risk with your investments. It's just a number of different positives that just kind of fall in line.
So Eric, I'll give you a chance to expound upon that, but then also when you're sitting with clients on a daily basis and you see, okay, someone comes in, they're a prospective client, they go through the retirement success planning process, and then they become a client. Feel free to expound upon that, but then also, what are some of the, I guess, incremental benefits? Is it less taxes you see clients paying? Is it more income that's being generated? You can talk about that a little bit as well.
Of course. And yeah, I mean, Ed hit the nail on the head perfectly, and that's kind of the decision-making process that goes and kind of the ramifications of it. When I talk to my clients, I kind of more so lead them back to what are they trying to accomplish, right? And the tax decision, I always give them an offer, hey, there's 3 layers of decision-making when it comes to taxes as to how you want it to affect your overall plan, right? Obviously, the goal is to make sure that whatever tax decisions we make, whatever when it comes to sequencing, Roth conversions, whatever it may be, has to benefit your bottom line at the end of the day, right? We have to be able to quantify that. We have to be able to look at it in a way that improves your situation, right? But many of my clients, they're married, and that can involve, hey, what does the tax situation look like if maybe one spouse is left, or I call it a changing tax situation. What happens if the tax code eventually changes again, like it has 5 times in the last, 5 years, right? And then ultimately, the third layer of that is the legacy side, right? Because all of those decision-making points have different areas that you can lean towards. And so whatever one you're trying to prioritize or whatever one you want to factor first can create a different sequence. So it's more about understanding what they want out of it before we can lead them to what is the exact right combination of it all.
So that's really interesting, because I was going to start this by laying out the three kind of different buckets. You have your IRA, your tax deferred. You have your non-IRA, so your non-qual as we call it, your taxable savings, your taxable brokerage, and your tax-free. So you have those three buckets to withdraw from, but I like the way you kind of broke it down there into three specific objectives that you may have in retirement. And those are just three broad categories. There very well could be, dozens more of things that you're trying to accomplish. But now different clients may have these, let's say, varying desires within those categories of objectives, such as legacy, for example, or income, or reducing taxes. Believe it or not, we have clients say, Troy, I don't care, right, what taxes I pay. I just don't care.
Sure.
They often have enough money to where it doesn't matter. But a lot of people, most people, they want to pay less in tax. So you have these three buckets of money. You have these three broad categories. And then you have varying desires of outcomes within those categories. And those will dictate what the ultimate strategy is as far as how much we're withdrawing from each of those potential accounts, when we're withdrawing from those accounts. Heck, Ed, we may institute a multi-account distribution strategy where it's some of it's coming from this account, some of it's coming from maybe this account, and legacy purposes, maybe they have a big legacy desire for kids or grandkids.
Sure.
Well, in that instance, the non-qualified may just be as powerful as the Roth IRA because of the step up in basis. So, so I'm starting to get excited about this. This is going to be a good one tonight. Okay, anything else to add to that, Eric? Before we kind of jump
that's kind of the overall gist of it. So excited to expound on it a little bit further with some specifics.
Yeah, good, because we're going to look at some case studies here. We're going to look at different scenarios, different people in different situations with varying objectives, and how that may impact the decisions you make from a sequencing standpoint. So first and foremost, before we get into this, I want to say hello to Drewski, first one on board here. Always, thank you very much. We appreciate you tuning in every single month. Terry, we have from Ashburnham, Massachusetts. Terry, how are you? Kathy from Houston, Terry from Fulshire, Jeff from Marysville, Washington, Scott from Pearland, Maria from San Antonio, Jim from Wisconsin. Really, really cool. So I was talking to, I was doing an interview. I'm looking at hiring someone today, and was just talking about how right now we have, I think, 50% roughly of our new clients come from outside of the state of Texas. And it's really because of YouTube. So pretty cool. And just seeing who's commenting here, it just kind of epitomizes that. So, okay, Ed, let's kind of jump right in.
I have to expand on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's just a great story. And I'll be quick, I assure you. But I started here at Oak Harvest January 2020. About, to be exact, 6 weeks before COVID. And I remember you and our co-founder Jessica coming out sometime in March saying, hey guys, we're shutting down. Things are shutting down. And so there's a lot of concern as far as, okay, how are we going to do this? Because you were still marketing the firm by seminars and hotels and restaurants. Well, that was all gone. And so that's when you started focusing on YouTube. And we all started drinking from a fire hose about this thing called Zoom. And
I thought you were going to say we all just started drinking.
Well, that too. We were doing that anyway. But my point is, here we are now, 2025, and most of our clients are coming from outside of the state. Yeah.
So here's the interesting part about that memory. We actually started, Eric, when was it? 18, 19, when we did our first video together, roughly. But it was COVID was the catalyst, because so much of our target demographic was in that age range where, one, possibly you may be more vulnerable to COVID if you have some type of pre-existing condition, some type of morbidity there. So more of our target demographic was staying home. And I'll never forget, I came into the office one morning and Eric was like, Troy, you got, what was it? Was it 100,000 views on a video? Something like that? And I was like, oh, man, that's really cool. All right, let's get to work. I'm busy. I got stuff to do today. And just never really thought about it. And then Nancy, who works at the front desk, many of you who are clients know Nancy. She's, in my opinion, the best receptionist and secretary in the entire state of Texas. She comes to me, she says, Troy, you're not going to believe this. Somebody from YouTube wants to sit down and meet you and talk to you. I said, what? And it kind of snowballed from there. So it was a really, really cool experience. So a little off topic, but it's good to kind of share that story. So, Ed, we have 3 different accounts where we can pull from. Broad categories. We have your tax-deferred, your retirement account. We have non-qual, which is your taxable, and you have tax-free. So when we're looking at these 3 different accounts, what is typically, you mentioned it earlier, the conventional wisdom. So much of your career, 20, 25 years before you came here, I guess 25, 27 years before you came here. Tell everyone what the conventional wisdom is, and then tell everyone now, with some of the tools that we have available, how the conventional wisdom for most of the people you sit with may not be the best strategy.
Conventional wisdom at its base was wait to pull from tax-deferred accounts, because by the time you retire, you will be in a lower tax bracket. And that goes back to financial planning, back when CFP and all of that, which we now all have. The common thinking was that if you're going to retire, and let's just use a simple example, and you're making $100,000 in your employment, if you retire, you're going to probably spend 75% of that in retirement. And so therefore, there's the example. You're going to be pulling in less money, reporting less taxable income, I should say. And then what has actually happened is we're living longer, and because of that, people have a lot more energy when I always use the example, hey, you're going to have more energy when you're 60 than when you're 80. And so you're doing more, and that costs money. And so people find that, I was making $100,000, just to use a simple example, when I was working, and here I am retired. I'm still spending $100,000 a year. So for a majority of the clients that I sit with, the fact that they are now retired, they're not in a lower tax bracket, despite the fact that we are in this current low tax environment, and I say that compared to history. And so that was the whole basis of conventional wisdom. The fact of the matter is, and I'll use more of a real story, that is, I'm doing that a lot with my clients now via the tax analysis that we're providing. People are handling their retirement needs by pulling from, let's say, I'll stick with the example, a tax-deferred account. Let's say let's keep Roth conversions out of this example. They're not even worried about that right now. They're just pulling from those IRAs. But via the tax analysis, for a lot of my clients, they're pulling now during the last 3 or 4 months of this year from their tax-free account. Why? Because now they're up against maybe a tax bracket going hypothetically from the 24 to the 32. They can stay in that 24 just by changing their income plan a little bit temporarily, to now go from tax-deferred to tax-free, and then we're going to revamp that again and start all over again in January.
It's dynamic.
Very dynamic.
It's dynamic,
Very
and this
so.
is what, we get asked all the time. What is, I don't want to generalize here, but I guess the point we try to convey is this thing changes, the income plan, the tax plan, it changes frequently. How is the market performing? Is the market going up or down? Well, that can impact where you're withdrawing from. Obviously, because growth rates are impacted and projections can change a little bit. Okay, I can easily get sidetracked here. I'm going to have to constantly rein myself in, or we won't kind of get through some of the big points that we want to talk about to really make this helpful for you at home. So, Eric, I'm going to ask you this, because we're going to talk about Social Security in just a minute. I'm going to come back to you on this, Ed, but let's say somebody withdraws from their non-IRA first. So
Sure.
You take from non-qual. What are some of the benefits that someone may realize if they do that? So you're retired. Doesn't matter what you spend, but you're pulling from your non-IRA accounts first.
Sure.
That means you're deferring those IRAs, those 401ks, the conventional wisdom that Ed mentions. What are some of the benefits that someone may realize if they pull from the non-qual first? And what are some of the downsides that they may experience today and possibly later?
Sure. I mean, the biggest one is depending on what your income goals are. The likelihood is that if you're pulling from your non-qualified accounts, you're going to be in that capital gains tax rate instead, right? Which is generally significantly lower, anywhere from, most people are in that 15% range, but it's lower than the 22% bracket, 24% bracket, so on and so forth, right? But the issue that you're going to run into is down the road, eventually those IRA buckets have to be touched, right? And That is through the required minimum distribution, or RMD. Heard a lot of different things about that over the years, and the government has gone and changed that finish line, 4 or 5 different times over the last 5 years, and they keep pushing it out, but that's really not to anyone's real benefit other than theirs, right? It's allowing it more time to bake for them so that they can start whatever percentage they have. And the idea behind that is you're going to have that kind of trade-off of that lower tax bracket on the front end, which could come with plenty of pros, right? While we have the, at least currently, the subsidies that are in place with the Affordable Care Act. Even if those wind off, there's still layers of subsidies that still exist. And so controlling your income can be very powerful by using those non-qualifieds. But is it really worth trading off the short term for the potential long term? That's what the analysis is for, right? Is to actually map that out, because most people don't think about both sides of the coin.
Yeah, so I'm going to unpack some really, really key things that you said there, because it's going to start to tie together, the significance of these decisions. So first, you started off talking about if you pull from your non-qual, you may have capital gains that you incur.
Sure.
And your long-term cap gains rate right now is 15%. But your short-term cap gains rate is your ordinary income tax rate. So depending on how long you've held that investment, you may be paying a higher tax rate, which is equal to what you would pay if you withdraw from your retirement account. So one layer. What is the holding period for the investments that you're withdrawing in your non-qualified account to generate income?
Absolutely.
And of course, you have dividends and interest possibly within that portfolio that are going to add into the tax return that you have to calculate. But then the next layer, yes, cap gains rate, long-term cap gains rate is 15% if you're in a certain income range, which most people entering retirement are. But the very first income tax rate is 10%, and then 12% is the second bucket. So you can have over $100,000 of income and pay less at the income tax rate than you would at the cap gains rate.
100%.
If you have no other income, because dividends are preferentially treated when it comes to how they're taxed. Because if you So now I'm really getting into
Went down that rabbit hole.
Because so qualified dividends, long-term cap gain rates, they're preferentially treated from a tax standpoint. So even though they have a 15% rate, because of standard deductions, because of certain parts of the tax code, you could easily, Ed, have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of dividends right now if you have no other sources of income and pay zero tax.
I've got a client in that situation right now.
Yeah. So here's now where it becomes, and even from an analytical standpoint, we have the data, but a lot of times it still becomes a subjective exercise because it's what do you want more? What is more important to you? I may sit with two clients and they have similar situations, but one may choose to go ahead and let's convert to the IRAs to Roth. Let's go ahead and live off some of the non-qual. They may pull from savings. We may do some tax loss harvesting and forego the preferential tax treatment of dividends, long-term cap gains, and Social Security because they want to tackle that infestation of taxation within the retirement account. That's the most significant thing to them. And then others may say, Troy, you know what? I'm fine. Let's roll the dice. Let's see what income taxes are later. I'll kick this can down the road. Let's, those retirement accounts, I'm not going to address that problem now. Let's deal with it in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. Let's focus on paying less tax now. Right. And we'll create an income plan, 50, 70, 80, 100,000 a year, no taxes at all. So I said there was a lot to unpack there, and you can see I'm starting to kind of get really, again, excited about this because it's what we do for a living. And, if you don't get excited about what you do, then why are you doing it? But Ed, I'll just let you add on to it. No question. But I know you have about 1 million thoughts running through your head right now.
Yeah, my head's starting to hurt, but in a good way. I just about to burst. No, there's a passion to this. And it is, we're talking taxes, and I know it sounds weird to say this, but it can be on the planning side quite enjoyable. Every time I'm going through a tax plan, I've always had a situation to where it just gets to a point to where you tell the client, okay, I always say all the time, here's where art meets science. Because back to the example, if we're going to have a number of low tax strategies for the next 5 or 6 years, and let's say they have a very large IRA balance, and the investment team here is doing their job, hi Chris and Charles, then that is going to continue to grow. And so in the short term, you have a benefit, but in the long term, you may have a tax problem or a higher tax issue on your hands once you hit those required minimum distributions. Because as you say all the time, it's not a question of if you're going to pay taxes on that money. It's just a question of when.
When and how much.
And how much, correct. And then on top of that, no one knows. I say this all the time, but I would say 99% of the people I ask, hey, by the time you are 75 or 73 or forget RMD age, by the time you're 80, where do you think tax rates will be compared to today? Because outside of maybe the early tax years, 1913 and stuff like that, we're in some of the lowest tax brackets in our lifetime we'll probably ever see again. And there's a strong argument for that.
Yeah. And I always like to clarify, maybe not the lowest tax brackets, or rates. I think you said it right. I actually, I don't remember how you said it, but it's the brackets that are so much bigger than what they've been before.
Correct.
The rates, we've had lower rates. Even, you kind of, you can go back not too far and find lower rates, but you filled up those buckets much more rapidly, and therefore, when you got to higher levels of income, you were effectively paying a lot more in tax. So you have this huge opportunity now, and that's kind of that's the tax planning side of it. So, okay, so I tell you what, we've spent a lot of time there, Eric. I'm going to throw the same question back to you, and then Ed, I want to jump to Social Security after this. But also, for those of you who are just tuning in, and those of you who are always here, we do a raffle. So the raffle is for a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. So there should be a QR code on your screen. You download it, you register. What you're going to get is some type of guide. I believe it's our tax guide tonight, maybe the retirement success plan guide. It's going to be filled with valuable information from an educational standpoint to help you in retirement, because we know many of you will call us, will work with us, and many of you will not, and that's completely fine. We still want to help you. So to enter the raffle, just simply scan that, download the information, and you'll enter for a raffle. And we're actually going to do that in, I think, about 5 minutes or so, Eric, maybe 10 minutes. And then we're going to do a second raffle at the end of tonight's show. So we're giving away 2 gift cards tonight. And the way this conversation is going, I kind of feel like we may end up giving a third away about an hour and 15, so 7:15 Central. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so what I want to now, so what we talked about there, Eric, was if you, and we're going to just take Social Security out of the picture entirely for now. You withdraw from your non-qualified accounts, some of the pros, some of the cons. You talked about dividend rates, comparing long-term cap gains rates, which are also qualified dividend rates, to the lower income tax rates, and that decision that you have to make there. But let's say, someone says, I want to withdraw from my retirement accounts first, my IRAs, my 401ks. What are some of the benefits of doing that today? And then what are some of the considerations or possible downsides of somebody taking from their retirement accounts now?
Sure. Well, I actually love the way that you just asked that question, because you said something along the lines of, what does a client prefer at the end of the day, right? Because that's one of the biggest things is there's obviously, when you look at numbers at the end of the day, right, and this comes to more of the people conversation of it, right? There's this pie in the sky perfect, immaculate plan out there that if somehow we execute in lockstep perfectly over the next 20 years is the best possible outcome, right? But how often in life do we choose the path of least resistance, not because we don't want to be efficient, but because there's just different life choices that exist out there, right? So when we talk about the tax plan side of it, it's, hey, lead with what you prefer, because then we can build something efficient around that, right? Tax planning is not one of those things that's going to be the difference maker of what makes you successful in financial planning or not, right? You make the choices that you want to make, and then our job is to help around that to make it as efficient as possible so that whatever goals are there are met, right? And the same thing. So going back to the question side of it is, when you look at the IRAs, right, taking those first and all of these different things, you're going to start drawing down that balance and you have the ability to do and control eventually your income tax rate, right? Because then you're just saying, hey, I want to draw that balance down. I know here's exactly what I need. And therefore, you can kind of basically predetermine what your taxable income is going to be throughout whatever period you're drawing that from, right? And the other big kind of pro that comes with that is being able to figure out, hey, if I draw at a certain rate, I can predict what my balance may be now when I get to that required minimum distribution age. And hopefully that is efficient for the remainder of my plan. Right?
So somebody who maybe let me bring that down. So
Sure.
somebody who maybe doesn't spend a lot of money, right? So, and by a lot of money in today's environment could still easily be 80, 90, $100,000 a year.
Right.
It's a relative kind of figure. We're relative to the tax brackets as they are now, but you could spend $90,000 a year. And now there's Social Security that's going to be turned on at some point, depending on your other assets. Maybe you have some real estate. Maybe you have, a lot of dividends or fixed income. All these variables are going to layer in on top of this for consideration. But given where we're at now, if someone wants to spend $90,000 a year, okay, you need to pull out probably $100, $105 from your retirement account. You'll write the check to the government for that $10,000 to $15,000, and you'll have your $90,000 spendable, and that's the choice that you may make.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the non-IRA accounts, assuming they grow over time, they're compounding. Those dividends are reinvesting, and let's say legacy is important to you. Well, that non-qualified account, it gets a step up in basis, so your kids receive it tax-free. The difference between that and the Roth is the Roth has 10 years to continue to grow tax-free, and the non-qualified account, yes, it receives a step up in basis, it passes tax-free, but once they receive it, it's immediately taxable, dividends, interest, cap gains as they buy and sell.
But the big thing is if you start to let those non-qualifieds grow too, you may be controlling your income with the taxable IRA side, but as those dividends and everything that accumulates in there, interest especially, trickles up and up, you may be creating some unintended income on the backside there as well.
Yeah. And that's the visibility that we talk about oftentimes is it's not our job to make decisions for you as clients or prospective clients. It's our job to use our software and tools and experience and expertise and experience. I think I said experiences, but to use all that to help bring you up to our speed so you can make the better decision and then create that visibility so you can actually see, okay, if I go this route, boom, 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 these are the potential outcomes versus if I go this route, these are the potential outcomes. So Eric and I, so for those of you who don't know, Eric produces all of our YouTube videos. I think I found Eric through Fiverr or something like that, one of those consulting. But Eric's been with me for 7 or 8 years now. And we were having this conversation recording this week's YouTube video. And I was talking about golf, and then this concept of being a captain to a ship came up. So in golf, for those of you who are golf, you'll get this. And then I have another metaphor if you're not a golfer. But when you come through, when you swing in that club face, it comes through the target zone. The goal is to be square to your target and square to the ball. And it should go straight, assuming your path is fairly straight as well. Point being is if your club face is open just 1/10 of a degree at the speeds you swing in the golf swing, it may end up being 30, 40, 50 yards off target. If it's just a little bit closed, you may end up being 30, 40, 50 yards off target this way, creating a dispersion of maybe 100 yards just from 1/10 of let's say an inch being open or shut. If you're a ship captain, okay, if I'm going and all of a sudden, let's say I steer like this versus steering like this, over time and through distance, I may end up being hundreds and hundreds of miles apart based on that one simple decision or one simple action of being here or here. What we're talking about tonight is the exact same thing. When you take Social Security, are you taking from your IRAs, your non-IRAs? What are you doing with the Roth, if anything? It's going to, those decisions, they compound and they add on top of each other in addition to compounding on top of each other. And you may end up here or here. Now, I'm not saying one is great, one is bad. They may both be really good, or they may both be mediocre. Those potential outcomes, we don't know. But the point is, you may be in two totally different directions based on these decisions that you're making or have to make soon based on IRAs, non-qual, Social Security, everything we're talking about here. So I thought, those were two really, really good metaphors to encapsulate the, I don't like the word consequence, but it really is the consequence of the decisions you make. And it's not just the decisions you make, it's the decisions you don't make.
Sure.
Okay, so We're going to do the raffle winner right now. Cynthia Arsenas. So you are our first raffle winner. So congratulations, Cynthia. Our marketing department will be in contact with you. We are going to deliver that $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. They're going to give you a call. They are going to ask you what your restaurant is, and they're going to take care of that. So, okay, so we have some polls coming up. I want to look at these polls, or some polls that have been going. I want to look at the polls and why I do this, and also some of the comments. Ed, I'm going to throw it to you because you're our national Social Security advisor, and as a designation, not endorsed by the government or anything like that, but you spend a ton of time researching Social Security, studying Social Security. One of the things that you do, Ed, which is impressive, is you just completed what was the designation you just completed?
Tax planning certified professional.
Tax planning certified professional.
Mouthful,
so Ed, he's been in the industry for 30 years. He's got every single designation, almost behind his name, and he calls me couple months ago, or a year ago, really, because it was, how long was the course?
It took me about 4 months.
About 4 months. Mm-hmm. Calls me and he's like, Troy, I think I want to do this designation. I was like, why?
So did my wife.
I was like, why, Ed? Seriously, Ed. What are you going to learn? But it's a constant commitment for you. So as our resident Social Security expert, mm-hmm. How does Social Security turning it on or electing to take it versus not taking it mm-hmm. play into this entire conversation we're having around taking non-qual or IRA distributions, and how does that blend together?
Right. Goodness, where to start? One, for me, it starts with, does the client need the funds? I see a lot of times people would turn on Social Security just because they can. I don't have any statistics to share there as far as that. I used to, but they're outdated now as far as how many Americans would turn on Social Security at age 62, again, just because they've reached that milestone. The other question I would have is, there's a benefit to turning it on early because you have that income coming in. And then from there, usually, and it's not meant to, but usually Social Security is not meant to replace 100% of one's income in retirement. Let's say the client's retired. Okay, fine. Now where do we pull the income from to make up for the difference? Mm-hmm. And on that case, now it becomes, okay, well, how much of your investable assets, what percentage from a tax perspective sits in non-qualified versus tax-deferred versus tax-free? And then the planning goes down from there. But in exchange for having the benefit of having Social Security turned on a little bit early, there's the benefit immediately of having it on right now, which I've mentioned over and over again. That's more short-term, and that's not wrong. It's just a short-term benefit. But now that you have that income coming in, you may be missing out on opportunities mm-hmm. from a tax planning. For example, I see it often, Eric, you probably do as well. Clients will come to us, they have 80, 85, 100% of their money in tax-deferred assets sure. because they've been putting money in a tax-deferred 401k. I can attest to this in the sense of, during the accumulation phase, they've got bills to pay. Right. Cash flow is king, so I can get a tax deduction today and get more more take-home pay, all the better. Yeah. But now, is it really better to continue to let that money grow? Because if you continue to ignore that, you may be pushed into higher tax brackets, not because the tax law changes, sure. just those RMDs start coming, and they're not static. They will continue to grow. Accounts can go up higher. The percentages that the IRS use to calculate your RMDs continue to go up year by year. So you may be missing out on, I often say you may be missing out on an opportunity, because as a planner, my first and foremost goal is to make sure what everybody's worried about. When can I retire? When not want to run out of money? Yes, how can I pay less tax? And if, God forbid, something happens to me, my spouse is going to be okay. So once all those boxes are checked, then we do more of the fine-tuning. I always use the example, very rarely do I see somebody, at least at this firm, where they're sitting down, and I had it at another firm. I'm not making fun of her, but she literally came in saying, it was at the other side of the mall here. I'll just leave it at that. But she came in saying, I'm ready to retire. And she was, again, I'm not making fun of her. She was probably 45. And I was looking at her and like, okay, well, good for you. And I was like, well, how much do you have in investable assets? And she's $100,000. Okay, I know where this is already going, but I said, well, how much do you want to spend a month? $10,000. I was like, okay, I have to ask the obvious question. What happens after 10 months? And so it just kind of hit her. But so I've never seen an extreme case like that. Usually here, clients have done just a fantastic job, sacrificed, saved, doing all the right things. But we can kind of make a good plan better. I don't see a bad plan that we're trying to save. And I tell clients all the time when I first meet with them, hey, the last thing I'm going to show you when we take them through our process is that, hey, your plan fails. Now let's talk about you becoming a client. Like, no, it is failing. But here's the smallest things you can do at the beginning of a 25, a 30-year time frame that'll put you right back on track. And so back to your question about Social Security, oftentimes I don't, again, as an improvement, we did a video on this, and that is I've had plenty of clients where I've said, hey, you know what? Looking at your overall tax situation and how you have money invested from a tax perspective, you may want to turn off your Social Security. You may actually want to turn that off. And don't stop retiring. We're going to start replacing that income from Social Security from your investment accounts. And
That's probably, how is that received when you tell someone you may want to turn that off?
Oh, it's not received in a popular way. Like, are you kidding? Like, why am I here? But once you start showing the numbers, and again, it's not right or wrong. It's just that here's the benefit of doing it, the longer term benefit.
Yeah. Has anyone actually said, you know what, I'm going to do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've even had clients pay it back so that they get that enhanced amount back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I told the client, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and there are actually very few singularly wrong decisions, right? Good example is if you got $500,000 to go buy a $250,000 Ferrari if you need that money, right? But
that is a singularly wrong decision.
That is a singularly wrong decision. But
unless, because we kind of have had a client in that situation, but he had like $10,000 a month in guaranteed pensions.
Sure, that does help as well. But let's talk about the normal people here. There's not a singularly wrong decision when it comes to financial planning. Social Security is a fantastic example of that, right? It's the combination of what you choose to do with the decisions outside of that now, right? It's if you absolutely want to take Social Security early, whether it's a concern around longevity or whatever it may be, early cash flow, then make sure that you're making the right decisions outside of that, supplementing it with the right buckets of income in this case, so that we do at least mitigate that problem that may or may not be happening on the back half of your plan, right? Mm-hmm. So it's never really a singularly wrong decision, unless the Ferrari situation, but it can be a combination of wrong decisions, right? So
yeah, because Social Security for most married couples is going to be between $1 to $2 million of income throughout their retirement.
Right.
You know, if you have $50,000 of Social Security combined, husband and wife, you live 20 years, no inflation adjustments, that's $1 million, right? So you are going to get inflation adjustments, historically speaking. And you may live 25 years, 27 years, 32 years, you may live 18, but with inflation adjustments, it's still over $1 million. I mean, some clients, husband and wife both worked. If they have health and longevity on their side, it could be over $3 million from Social Security. But let's bring it back to the topic at hand, which is, let's say I turn Social Security on and then I withdraw from my retirement account. So I'm going to throw it to you, then I'm going to give you the non-qualified. What happens if they follow, their friends at work, say, you know what, I'm retiring, I'm going to turn that Social Security on, and then I want to supplement it. I want to help my daughter out. She's going to college. I want to go on this vacation over the summer. I've never been to Europe. And they turn Social Security on, and they also take, let's say, $40,000, $50,000 out of the retirement account that first year. How does that impact their tax situation? Let's just focus there.
Yeah. I mean, the simple kind of point in time is just the fact that, hey, depending on how much income is being generated around Social Security, it affects how much of that Social Security counts as taxable income, right? It can range anywhere from 0% all the way up to 85%. And if you're going to take X amount of dollars out of your IRA, well, now you've got 85% of your benefit that's being taxed as income, plus the income tax of the distribution from the IRA. So that's the simple.
Yeah, so you're taking that Social Security, right? But because you're also taking from the IRA, now you're dragging. I like to call it a net, right?
Sure.
Think of your IRA. I don't know if this makes a ton of sense, but I like to think of the IRA as like a fisherman, right? You know those cast nets that have the anchor on the, you take from the IRA, it's like throwing that cast net out. And a lot of times what it does is it drags in your Social Security into a state of taxation. Possibly your Medicare premiums can drag them into a higher state of essentially taxation, just a higher premium. So I like to kind of think of it that way.
Sure.
Maybe that's just me. Okay, Ed, so same situation. Person B. They retire. They say, you know what? I'm taking my Social Security. That's just what I'm doing.
Right.
It doesn't matter. But I want to go on this vacation to Europe. I want to help my daughter who's going to college, but I'm going to withdraw from my non-IRA accounts to do that. I have about $250 in savings. I'm going to do that. What happens to their Social Security and the taxation around it in that scenario?
Well, if you said savings, the first thing I'm thinking to myself is if they have $250,000 in a money market type of savings and they're pulling money from that, that's not going to show up on their tax return. And so that's not going to show up as taxable income. Because of that, with their Social Security, and once you start throwing in deductions, whether they're itemizing or taking the standard, their Social Security benefits will not be taxed. Let's say that it's in investments. There's still advantages there. We've been talking about it here tonight. Sure. And that is long-term capital gains are preferentially taxed, keeping that taxable income low, not netting more of that, bringing or dragging in more of that Social Security benefit to where it's be going into that taxation from 0 to up to 50 to up to 85. Tax loss harvesting.
Sure.
You can lower your taxable income there from that perspective as well. And so there can be advantages to that as well, to where you're not bringing in that Social Security. And that, again, it's very easy to bring that Social Security into taxation because the levels, if you will, I'll stick with the married filing jointly, don't get adjusted for inflation every year.
The thresholds.
The thresholds. And so I think it's 40. Once you get past 44,000 in 2025, it's 85% of your benefit becomes taxable.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's a provisional and modified adjusted gross income, calculation there, but
and only half Social Security gets counted in that calculation.
But there's a calculation.
But,
it doesn't take much.
Yeah. So I chuckled here because we had a shout out to Nicole and Travis. So we always joke with Tavis that it seems like every time I try to talk to Tavis, I say, "Hey, Travis."
You just did.
I'm just used to it. Yeah. No. I was pointing it out that.
I got you. Oh, they said Travis on there. I got you.
Okay, so here's something interesting here, and Nicole always gets shouts out. So, Nicole, if you're watching, you got another one. So good for you.
The best of us.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting one. So we did a poll, and it said, which account would you draw from first in retirement? 48% said IRAs, 401ks, and then 42%, Eric, said taxable accounts. So kind of an even balance here. Sure. So I'll throw it to you first. And just thinking back to my experience, I spent years working with clients and doing everything that these guys are doing on a daily basis. I have my own perspective here, but I want to hear from you guys. Does anyone share with you often what they are planning on doing as far as taking from the IRAs or non-IRAs? And if so, what's that breakdown?
Yeah. Well, to your point, that poll I think is actually skewed only because I think the folks that are watching have watched enough of the videos that we've done here at Oak Harvest.
That's a good point.
Because frankly, the folks that don't, and I'm going to go to past experience here because it's not the only place that I've done this at. And so most of the time, 80% of folks are planning on taking from taxable first because, to Ed's point, there's a term right there, conventional wisdom, that we keep using because that is the conventional wisdom. So before they're educated through what we've been talking about on the videos over the years and things like that, most of them are taking from taxable dollars first and letting that bake. And they only come into us because, hey, we've shown them or offered some piece of educational advice that says, hey, maybe that is a little bit different, right? So I think that poll is a good indication that you're making the impact that you want to make.
So, and I'm sure we have a lot of clients here watching too.
Sure.
But there's a modified conventional wisdom, right?
Sure.
Let's look at this. Like what I'm considering a modified conventional wisdom is we do Roth conversions. Okay, so we're pulling kind of from that IRA to convert it. But then what we're doing, we're spending our non-qual first because we're creating, let's say we're targeting the 12% or the 22 or the 24% bracket. So we're doing conversions up to that point, right, which is filling up those buckets. And then we're withdrawing from the non-qualified. So just as a reminder, conventional wisdom is defer IRAs, pull from non-IRAs. What I'm saying is modified conventional wisdom, I'm just making this phrase up, but it's convert the retirement accounts and pull from the non-IRAs. Yeah.
No, that's exactly correct because generally conventional wisdom is no tax planning whatsoever.
It
just
is.
path of least resistance, non-qual, tax-deferred, tax-free.
Well, sorry. So this thought just came back to me because I wanted to say it earlier. Like, I know I'm not the first to espouse this, but it feels like I was the first 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Where was the state of retirement planning like 15, 20 years ago when everyone was saying conventional wisdom? You'll be in a lower tax rate. You know, don't take from the IRAs. Did they not know about required minimum distributions? Did they not do simple math to where if you add RMDs on top of Social Security, on top of dividends and interest and everything else, that you might actually be in a higher tax bracket at some point in the future? Like these, where did this come from, and why was there such a lack of understanding of actual income and tax planning and retirement?
I have a hypothesis on that.
Same.
Go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Well, one is it's got actually proven research, right? And that's because typically before this modified conventional wisdom, I'm going to use your term now, came about, it was because the window of when folks were retiring and when those RMDs started was so tight, right? Because it used to be 70 and a half. Right now it's 75 for if you're born past 1960.
Okay, so that's a good point. So
right?
you work till 67 or 68.
Correct.
You start RMDs at 70 and a half.
Yep.
Okay, you don't have much time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And then with COVID, everyone's like, well, crap, now I want the quality of life side. I've worked all this time, so I'm going to retire even earlier. And then on top of that, the RMD age is pushed even further. So actually, naturally, the spread of when folks had the opportunity to do this tax planning naturally actually expanded.
Yeah.
As opposed to kind of where we're at maybe 10, 15 years ago when everyone worked until their full retirement age at 66, or now it's 67. It's going to keep getting pushed up, guys.
Yeah.
And now the RMD spread has a window there to work with, right? So,
when I first was introduced to some of the financial planning software back in the early 2000s, I say this to every single client when I'm first introducing them to the firm. We run our models to age 95. We run very conservative assumptions. One of those conservative assumptions is longevity, unless the client, of course, tells me, hey, I'm not going to tell you my personal medical history, but that it just ain't going to happen. Okay, fine. But for the most part, now it's age 95. Back when I was first running these, and again, I'm going 2001, 2002, I remember the program compared to what we're using now. It's amazing the technology we have, and that's not a boast, that's just fact. But I'm getting the same pushback today at age 95 that I was getting back in 2001. My point is we were running scenarios to age 75. So think about that. If the required minimum distribution age is 70 and a half, people weren't too worried about required minimum distributions because they weren't going to live into that until maybe 3-4 years. And again, people were giving me pushback. I'll never live to age 75. And also, back then, we didn't have the Secure Act 2.0 or Secure Act, where that 10-year window, which now exists, was not an issue. So even if they left a large IRA to the kids had the rest of their lives to empty out those IRAs and didn't have to empty them out. They just had to take required minimum distributions, which were based on their lifetime, which were much, much smaller. Now, that's gone. The stretch IRA is a thing of history.
Okay, guys, we have a second raffle coming up here in just a little bit where we're going to give you a raffle. You have to download. There should be a QR code. You have to download one of the guides that we have there. We're going to reach out to you if you win the raffle and get you a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. That's coming up in about 10 minutes. And the way this is going, guys, I think we're going to continue. We still have a good amount of people watching here. We may continue a little bit longer. But I want to shift to healthcare now. So healthcare, it's interesting because we're in this state to where the Affordable Care Act it's a government-run, essentially, healthcare system, and we're at the point now where the government subsidies are ceasing. This is why the government is shut down. This is literally, I think, the main sticking point of why the government is shut down.
Sure.
As it relates to our conversation tonight, and maybe I kind of let the cat out of the bag here, but I was going to ask you guys, would it ever make sense? You've done the Roth saving. You've done either contributions and growth or conversions. And we actually got a question, pre-submitted question tonight from Rose Jones, which kind of ties in here. When would we want to, besides maybe that, but you can talk about it if you'd like, take from the Roth early? You know, and who would be the person that benefits from just deferring it till later? So, Eric, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, when it comes to healthcare, that's why our retirement success plan, it comes right after tax planning, right? Because a lot of the cost of healthcare are derived from what your taxable income is from subsidies from the Affordable Care Act, right? So Obviously, when we plan, we can only plan for what we know, right? And for the past 5 years, we've known that there's been subsidies in place, but now with that not going forward and that being the sticking point, and obviously worst case scenario, it doesn't go forward, it's a great chance to I'm going to call it reconfigure that analysis, if you run analysis, right? Because we've run analysis to where, hey, the reason that we are okay with our income being where it's at is because we qualified for subsidies, right? And when you talk about this whole tax planning thing, right? There's what reason Ed said that the age 95 versus 75 is really important, because when you do this tax planning and you do conversions and things like that, there's time that has to be made up on the back end, and when you reduce that tax drag to break even, right? Healthcare is a drag to that, right? Your expenses are a drag. When we run that analysis, it's one of the main line items right there.
It's one of the main reasons why we may defer Roth conversions, because you'll save more, at least in the previous 4 or 5 years, by pulling from the non-qual, deferring the IRAs, to have your taxable income lower, therefore qualifying for a subsidy where you save $20,000, $24,000 a year today in real dollars for health insurance premiums.
Yeah, so that's really the justification for, if you've had the Roth and had it long enough to start using it, there's absolutely justification to use that first, only on a temporary basis, right? Until you get to that Medicare age. It's mostly for the Medicare health insurance to maybe look at that, right? Obviously, folks that have HSAs and things like that will be able to use those completely tax advantage, but that's absolutely the main justification to, especially in today's environment.
Yeah, and we're going to see that more and more, I think.
Yeah.
But I tell you this, guys, this is one of the things that I'm going to be really, really proud about over the next 1, 2, 3 years, is how much planning we've done on that side, which we have clients that are going to be prior or younger than 65. Which, because of the planning that we've done, they're retired. They're going to be in a position to where, guess what, we can do? We can pull income from those places, and I don't want to use the word manipulate. Let me stipulate this. You can spend $80,000 in retirement, but on your tax return goes zero. Right? You can spend $90,000 and on your tax return goes 20. This is what the entire live stream is about tonight. How do we strategically pull from these different places? You can spend high levels of income if that's what you want to do in retirement. That's not what we're talking about. What we're discussing is what goes on your tax return. And by having this flexibility, this planning, and this is just one thing, and this has happened this year. How many things do you think are going to happen in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 7, in 12, and 15? I mean, we talk about, we don't want to get too much into politics here, right? But one of the problems that we have as a country is the $37 trillion or so in national debt. We did a live event today, and I asked the crowd, I said, if none of us could leave this room today until we counted to $1 trillion, how long would we be here? You know, someone over here says, 30 days. Someone says 2 years. Someone says, 6 hours. The answer is 32,000 years to count to 1 trillion, right? And so we're at 36, 37 trillion in debt. I don't know if taxes are going to be higher in the future, but what I know is that Congress, both sides of the aisle, are going to tweak and twist and turn the tax code, and new things are going to be introduced, and things are going to be removed, like the healthcare subsidies that we're dealing with now and why the government is shut down. So this is all over a subsidy fight for the most part.
Sure.
And this is impacting people who retire prior to 65. It's impacting everyone. But in our, side of the world, we work with people who retire at 60, 59, 57, 62, 64. And this is a huge thing to them because their premiums may jump from, paying nothing because of the planning we're doing to maybe $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year, maybe 35, 40, depending on what the premiums actually come out. But because of the planning that we've done, what we've created is flexibility. They now have choices. Hey, guess what? This wasn't the plan, but what are we going to do? We're going to pivot, and we're going to pivot to a position that helps us save more money today, and then we're just going to get back on track. But to think that this isn't going to happen in some form or fashion in 2, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 years from now, I think is optimistic, let's say.
Yep.
That's the whole idea behind planning. We get the question all the time of, particularly from prospective clients, is, okay, show me my plan, as in, okay, here's where you are and you can retire for the next 30 years and everything is now set in stone. Why don't you go ahead and for the next 10 years, go ahead and book your next 10 years worth of vacations, because nothing's going to change. Your health's not going to change. Your expenses aren't going to change. Tax law's not going to change. Who's in the White House is not going to change. And that's obviously just, tongue in cheek here. And so, we get that a lot. It's like, no, we're constantly pivoting based on new data
Think
that we
about
receive.
it. Just in the past 5, you've brought it up twice tonight, how much things have changed in the past 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
But think about COVID. We've had the Secure Act 1, Secure Act 2. We've had the IRA, which is I forget the acronym, what it stands for. The Build Back Better, the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's just year after year after year. What was the IRA one? And that President Biden did?
Inflation Reduction
Act. It's just year after year after year. It's part of what makes us exciting, but it's part of what makes us annoying.
Sure.
It's just constantly going back and saying, okay, here's the deal. Now we're going to withdraw from your non-qualified, or now we're going to withdraw from your IRA. Perfect example. Once the Inflation Reduction Act, I believe that was the one that increased the subsidies, we were able for a lot of clients to not only do Roth conversions, maybe we're targeting the 22% bracket or maybe 12 for an extended conversion strategy, but we were also maybe able to pull income from that IRA to help balance it out, because we weren't going to go into the next threshold for increased healthcare premiums, losing the subsidy, because there was so much money there that increased. It went from being like this amount of income to you could have this much income and still pay nothing in health insurance premiums. And so much of all this planning, right? Obviously, tax planning specific is what we're talking about today. But so much about planning is reactive, and the best way to react about anything is having all the tools available, right? So if you take nothing away from this, it's having each of these buckets available to you, right? Whether it's you have to proactively, whether you already have it, or you have to start incrementally creating that, right? This isn't a recommendation to take all of your IRA and convert it into a Roth, right? There's incremental changes that you make over time, the same way that your portfolio incrementally grew because of the small decision makings, the small compounding growth rates over time. It's the same thing with all of this types of planning, right? And diversification is just this buzzword that everyone throws out and only really think about it with your stock makeup, but it's the same thing with your diversification and tax structures, right? Being able to, I'm not going to use the word manipulate, but it's being able to dictate what shows up on that line item in your tax return at the end of the day, right?
I think Troy.
No, I'm not laughing at you, but it's really insightful, and that's exactly what we're talking about. But I always love engineer jokes. So
I'm scared for this.
Yeah. So no. I'm just having trouble keeping up over here with this new setup. And you know what, Corinne, if you're watching, or Eric, or whoever, wouldn't it be really cool if on this backdrop here, if we could actually have the questions or the polls or something like that, and we could kind of interact with them in real time? Okay, but Scott says, as a recovering engineer, this topic is exactly the optimization problem that drove me to become a client. So Scott, first and foremost, thank you for becoming a client. But a long time ago, many of you don't know this, but I moved across the country. I was working for another firm. I was not happy with how that was going, and I moved across the country. I didn't know anyone in Houston. I came here and I started this firm. And then someone told me, they're like, Troy, you went to Houston? Of all places, why would you go to Houston? I was like, it seems like a really good city to me. I mean, there's a lot of people there with money. There's a huge opportunity, big industry, just love it. But there's engineers there. I was like, what does that mean? They're like, well, engineers, your 3-appointment process, it's going to turn into a 9-appointment process. And I was like, okay, that does make sense. But more than half of our clients are engineers, and it's because they appreciate the analytical approach. And conversely, it's kind of maybe my weakness to other people who aren't as analytical as me, or some engineers, and maybe the marketing message doesn't always come across as well. But they get it. right? And so as a recovering engineer here, Scott, thank you so much for getting it and for understanding and for being a part of this Oak Harvest team and family, because this is we're here for you. Okay, so we have our second raffle winner. And then what we're going to do here after this raffle winner is we have some pre-submitted questions we're going to go through. If you guys have any questions, make sure to get them in. We're going to go for about another 15 minutes. We're going to do a third raffle, and then we're going to call it a night. So our second raffle winner is Todd Wilson. So Todd, congratulations. Our marketing department will be in contact with you to deliver the gift card to your favorite restaurant. And for those of you who may just be tuning in or have not yet won, we're still going to do one more raffle in about 15 minutes. We're right at 7 o'clock. $100 to your favorite restaurant. Guys, I know we had a lot of information we didn't get to, but I think this has been a really, really good conversation. What I'm going to do is kind of rapid fire some of these questions, and let's just have a brief conversation about them. If we get some questions submitted, we'll address them as well.
Sure.
And then
they're tax related. They won't be brief.
Yeah, not much we do. So Eric will tell you. I'm like, I think this is going to be about an 8-minute YouTube video today. Eric's like, man, I got 6 hours of editing to do. It's going to be a 30-minute video.
Just for the confusion in the crowd, it's a different Eric that's over there behind the screen.
Oh, yes, yes.
There's two Erics here, by the way, yes.
Eric with a K and Eric with a C.
Yep.
Okay. First question, Ed, and this is probably not going to be a brief answer, but it's going to be educational, and it's about Roth IRAs and the 5-year rule.
Yes.
And a unique rule that Ed actually just taught me tonight that I learned for the first time. Okay, so Rose Jones, I mentioned your name earlier, in case you're here and watching. We asked for pre-submitted questions about the topic at hand, and Rose submits, I have a small Roth account in my TSP, which is a thrift savings plan, for a government employee that I opened and funded over 5 years ago. So 5 years is a critical number for Roth accounts. Can I convert my pre-tax thrift savings plan assets, dollars, into a Roth thrift savings plan? So think of a TSP as a 401k, except a government 401k. And she has a Roth established, funded it over 5 years ago, so it's the 5-year rule is satisfied within that plan. And she's asking, can she take her pre-tax dollars and move them to the tax-free Roth portion within the thrift savings plan and then be eligible for immediate withdrawal at 59.5 when she retires?
Mm-hmm. The simple answer is yes. It really is.
Okay, next question.
Case. Go ahead.
No. But let's talk about it because there's a lot of nuance here that I think is worth exploring.
The way I studied up on this, the professor basically said when it comes to Roth or the 5-year rule, it's broken down either into qualified distributions, which is what you want. Mm-hmm. Qualified, full stop. That means that everything is tax-free.
You're over 59.5. The account's been there for more than 5 years. Qualified, everything's tax-free.
I'm going to go back to my DJ days, 1988, Rob Bass. It takes two. The two scenarios are you have to have the IRA for 5 years. I'm sorry, the Roth for 5 tax years. So as an example, if you're 55, that's 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. So when you're 61, you have satisfied that 5-year rule. So that's option number one. Requirement number two is you have to be 59.5. You have to pass away. You're going to buy a first-time home, those types. So if you have those two type scenarios in general, then the answer to her question is yes. The other thing she's talking about, though, is conversions. They have their own 5-year rule. It's not much more difficult, and that is each conversion has its own 5-year clock. Again, these are tax years, so it doesn't matter if you do it on, what is today, the 29th? It doesn't matter if you do it on October 29th. It's just you did it in 2025, so that gets that clock rolling. Now, if you have not attained the age 59.5 yet, you can't touch that conversion. It would be taxable to you. But once you hit 59.5, you've checked the box yet again.
So let's talk about the difference, though, between, okay, but here's the nuance, and this is where I want to drill down, and we'll move to the next one. If the only Roth account she has is the TSP, the thrift savings plan, she retires. And like most people, they roll it into an IRA or a Roth IRA.
Yes.
What happens, because now she's opened her very first Roth IRA, even though she satisfied the 5-year rule in the government plan, the TSP, what happens with the new Roth IRA that she opened up and has rolled that money into?
When you take funds from a TSP or 401k, it's called a designated retirement account, or DRA. When you pull that from a designated retirement account like a TSP and move it to, I'm going to call it your brokerage Roth, not an employer's Roth, that 5-year clock does start over again. Now, again, if you're over 59 and a half, this is nothing to really be concerned with. But here's why. When you put it into a brokerage Roth, there is an ordering of how the IRS views your withdrawals. The first thing they look at is, what did you contribute? What are your contributions? Those are always tax-free, because
in an IRA, in a Roth IRA.
In a Roth IRA, the contributions in a Roth IRA are always going to be pulled out tax-free.
So let's slow down. Let's break this, because this is not an easy topic to follow. So I want
you can see my passion. I'm getting
Well, I want to
excited.
break this off into chunks. So if you open a Roth IRA, many of you know that there's a 5-year rule. But when you put money in, that you can take those contributions out, and there's no penalty, there's no violation of the 5-year rule, because you can always take your contributions out of the Roth IRA. You just can't touch earnings for the first 5 years. But in the TSP or a 401k, that's different. The contributions, they don't come out what we would call FIFO, right? First in, first out. They come out on a pro rata basis. So what does that mean?
Basically, the custodian of the Roth 401k, knows how much you've contributed, how much maybe you've converted, and also what the earnings are. And so when you start to pull those money out, they basically title them, hey, some of your distribution, let's say that it's 33% across the board, 33% contributions, 33%, that's actually 50-50. Let's make it even simpler.
50-50.
Okay, so when you pull it out on a prorated basis, you're getting 50% of that distribution as your return of principal, if not principal, return of the contribution. But then the other 50% is considered part of your earnings. So now you may be taxed on that.
So you may be taxed on it, and you may have a 10% penalty if you're younger than 59 and a half.
Correct again.
So Rose, it seems like a very simple question, and obviously you've probably done a little bit of research and realized how complex of a question it actually is. I think the number one takeaway for you is, yes, you can do it, and this isn't personal advice. We're talking in general about TSP plans that have been established for 5 years as a Roth. Can you retire and take money from them with no taxation? Yes, in general you can. But if you roll it into a Roth IRA, you may possibly start a new window, which our understanding is. But I would recommend you talk to a CPA and you talk to a tax professional, and you have that conversation. But it's an excellent question, and we encourage you to explore that a bit more. Okay, another good question. So many good questions. These are the best questions that we've had asked tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I said we're going to have brief answers, but to answer them thoroughly, I don't know how we can do this, but
I'll do my best.
Okay, so this is from a client, Tom. I'm going to leave your last name out just because you're a client. Along with deciding which accounts to withdraw from, Eric, how should market conditions, so if the market's up or is the market down, impact the type of assets?
Sure.
So I love the way Thomas went with this. Tom, I love what you did here, because we would normally look at it from a account standpoint. Should I convert more to Roth?
Sure.
Should I withdraw from the IRA? Should I withdraw from the non-qualified? If the market is up, market is down. He went from it from an asset standpoint,
sure,
equities versus fixed income, and there are some considerations when you start to look at that decision. So Eric, he says, along with deciding which accounts to withdraw from, how should market conditions impact the type of assets, stocks versus bonds, that you would sell and withdraw from?
Sure. So just like we've answered pretty much every question on the front end with the tax plan, right? It's the short-term problem versus the long-term problem, right? In this case, it can be, and it also can be a long-term or short-term benefit and a long-term benefit, right? And so the same concept applies, right? When you understand what your tax plan is, you know how to react. But then you also, when you understand your asset makeup, you also know how to react, right? If we're looking at, I'm just going to use a very kind of random scenario here, right? And so if we're talking about doing a lot of different Roth conversions and those kinds of things in this conversation, right? And obviously trying to meet your income at the same time, right? If I was you and I was needing income, but then also wanting to do a Roth conversion, and let's just say the market's down, right? If I'm going to do that, and we do this all the time for clients here, right? It would make the most sense as to, yes, hey, take from the part that's less down, right? Because those are the dollars that you're going to use that's not going to ever really be back in the picture when the market does rebound, right? And for the dollars that you may convert, hey, the equities are what you should be converting, right? Because when it rebounds, you'd love to have all those shares be in a different tax environment, right? In that tax-free environment, right? So when you look at it is, hey, when you're taking money out, and because usually these questions are asked in the event of an adverse market, right? So I'm using that as the example. Mm-hmm. Take from the dollars that are less down, right? Whether it's your fixed income dollars, your annuity dollars, whatever it may be, and allow for the dollars that are naturally going to rebound to be untouched, right? Or even if, even better scenario, rebalance more into those shares at that period of time, yep. Right? So that's the way I would answer that, is just understand, hey, what's your tax plan, but then also what's your asset makeup, so that you know what you're trying to do in the short term and what are the ramifications that it takes for the back end. And conversely, we talk about a lot in this firm about risk willingness and having congruence between how your portfolio is built and constructed and what its potential fluctuation or volatility is versus your willingness to stay committed to a plan. And based on the answer to that question, your willingness, it could dictate the answer to that question, because if someone's willing to take more risk, you have to understand when we have a bull market in stocks, your allocation becomes more heavily balanced. So our more conservative are clients that are less willing to stay committed to a plan when things get volatile. They're going to want to take some of those profits off the table, which naturally rebalances the portfolio back in line, but they're essentially getting income as well. That's where they're living off that income. Correct. This is where we may stop IRA withdrawals or reconsider what we're doing from Social Security. But we're rebalancing. At the same time, we're providing income while we're managing the tax situation. Other clients who may be more risk, let's say, courageous, okay, they may have a different strategy that we employ based on the growth goals, the tax goals, the other income plan. So it just brings layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of complexity. And we talked about it earlier, the science versus the art. There's no exact right answer that I can tell you that you should just do this and you'll be good, because every one of you have different considerations, different cares, different things that you're trying to accomplish. And this alters the calculus.
You say all the time, we will not put our clients in a box. Everybody is unique.
We build the box around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rosa says, or Mary Beth Rosa says, I'm going to skip over the beginning part. Thank you very much for what you said here, though. I'm 59 years old, and this year a lot of changes have happened. My question to you is not part of your question, but if feasible. So sorry, I'm going to pass over that one. That's looking for a CPA in New Jersey. We can help you with that. We will talk to the team. I'll see who you're working with, and we'll be able to help you out there. Okay. Here's a good one. And I love, Robert Roth.
Hey, Bob.
Bob's good to see you, or not see you, but hear from you. It's been a little while since I've seen you. If husband and wife have grossly different IRA account balances, is there a specific reason to take it all from the larger account? And will the IRS allow that RMD for joint filing purposes? But can I take it all, or can I take it all from one account? So this is a multi-layered question. So let me repeat it. What he's asking, I think, aggregation. Can husband and wife aggregate IRAs? Maybe, I think, is what he's asking. But more strategically, and because it's a little bit of a complex question, I'll go ahead and answer this one. So here's what we look at when it comes to which spouse should take distributions from the IRA first if you have grossly different balances. It's going to be age, Bob. So let's say you're 70 and you have a smaller account, but your wife is 62 and has the larger account. depending on what those balances are. But most likely, I'm going to have the younger spouse with the larger account take it because we have far more time to bring that down. And if you hit RMD age with the smaller account, it's going to be inconsequential, the amount of RMD. You're talking 3.754% of a smaller balance. Now, let's flip that on its head and say you're 70 and you have $2 million in your retirement account and your wife is 60 and she has $250,000. Okay, we're not touching her account for a very, very, very long time. We're accelerating distributions from your account. We're accelerating Roth conversions. Boom, 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 boom. We're trying to get you into what I would call a state of equilibrium from a tax standpoint and an income standpoint, to where the income that you need to live your lifestyle, hopefully we can do tax planning, Roth conversions, distributions, et cetera, to where your RMDs are equal to what your spending goal is, so your tax situation is improved long term. But we're accelerating the planning with your account because of your age and your account balance, as opposed to your wife's, because we have plenty of time to deal with that. So would you guys add anything onto that?
Well, basically, the question he's asking is, can her distributions from her account count as RMDs from
That's
his
what
I
I
think
heard.
that's the second part of the question.
Right.
there.
So then the answer is no, right? And that's just the IRS treats you separately, unfortunately, but eventually one person's gonna own that. But the layer of it is the combination is exactly kind of how you laid it out, because it is looked at separately.
Okay, so here's an interesting question that I've actually never explored or considered or
Sure.
looked at. And if I wish we had some of the attorney friends that we have here. So let's say, given the unlimited marital deduction, if a spouse were to gift their IRA to their husband, how does that get titled? And then what happens to RMDs?
I would imagine there's similar to everything
Can you
else.
gift an IRA? Does it change title?
I don't think
It
it can
must
change
not be
title
able to,
because you
no.
have to distribute it out.
Yeah, that would be
It's-
something
yeah.
that would be a common practice if you could do that. But think about it from an unlimited
Yeah.
marital deduction standpoint. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. But now you can't.
But that
think you'd
deduction
have-
doesn't translate to tax treatments, right? Because everything is realized when you make that.
At the income tax.
Well,
level.
even if it's after tax assets, everything gets realized when the things get passed back and forth. So.
Yeah. Only the estate level. I don't know, it's just a crazy thought.
I'm leaning towards the IRS is probably onto that. They make you take the money out, pay taxes on it, and then you can
Gosh.
take advantage of the unlimited deduction.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yes.
I mean, it is a crazy debate, though, right? Because technically, no matter what, the government's going to win in some way, shape, or form, right? Especially with that 10-year IRA condension on the back end. So,
But, yeah, I was just thinking from a gifting standpoint, if you completely gave it away. But I guess it has to stay titled in the original spouse's name, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, but great question, Bob. Okay, guys, so I told you 15 minutes. We are at 17 minutes, so we're going to do the raffle right now. And then we have a few more questions. I think 3 we're going to answer. And if you want to stick around, feel free to stick around. If you're just here for the raffle, we're going to call it now, and you guys can go on about your night. But the third winner is Tim LeClaire. So, Tim, thank you very, very much for tuning in. You are a third raffle tonight, and whenever we do a third raffle, it's always a good conversation.
Yeah.
So this has been really good, guys. I want to thank you very much for coming tonight. Okay, Paul Fogel. Paul, great to hear from you, man. You've been here since the beginning. Really, really appreciate your efforts of just supporting us, month in and month out on these live streams. Good question. We kind of addressed it earlier, and I think maybe preparing for tonight's live stream is where I came up with this question I asked you, Eric.
Sure.
But just to briefly touch on it again, Paul says, if I have a higher level of income, should I consider, and he's younger than 65, and the healthcare subsidy question, should he consider taking from his Roth IRA sooner to manage the taxable income
Sure.
that determines his qualification for a subsidy or not?
Yeah. So any of these tax conversations, right, that involve taxable income in which you're taking a hit up front and trying to make it up somewhere else or needing to make it up somewhere else, just like there is with Social Security. I'm going to go back and steal kind of Ed's thunder with his concept that he's really good at. But Social Security, when you make that decision, a lot of people talk about the timeline on which it makes sense, right? You got the time value of money if you take it early, and as long as you live long enough, if you wait longer and you start at that higher amount, eventually taking that higher amount on the back end will break even, right? And it's the same question that we're asking when it comes to these tax questions, right? It's not this, you make this one tax decision and all of a sudden you're in a significantly better situation, right? It's you make one decision, you start back a little bit, but then the growth on the backside makes a break-even point with your alternative decision, right? And so kind of going to your question specifically is have the ability to, or have somebody with the ability to calculate what that break even is, right? Before you determine if it's a good idea. And basically the question that you're asking is, hey, if me taking out these dollars that are never going to be taxed and can grow uninhibited tax-free is worth the break even of reducing my expenses for a year for $25,000, if you're spending less than $100,000 a year, it probably is, right? But if you're spending $250,000, $300,000 a year in retirement, like some clients are, that $20,000 expense is not going to make as big of a difference to inhibit taking from that Roth, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good example, right? It's just there's a break even in making that choice. So be connected enough to your plan to make that calculation and make that choice.
But the one thing I always talk about,
Yeah.
because so many advisors and people in our industry, they
Sure.
focus simply on the tangibles, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time. We need to start talking about break even that brings in the intangibles.
Sure.
Like, okay, risk, for example. An intangible would be what makes me sleep better at night,
Sure.
right? If I should have, let's say a 60-40 portfolio, because I'm going to average, hypothetically, 6.5%. Versus if I went to a 40-60, I would sleep a lot better, but I'm only going to average 5.6,
Sure.
5.7. But I sleep a lot better at night. I'm not going to have as much money when I pass away, and maybe I spend a little bit less annually. But you know what? If things go bad, I'm going to be better off. And I'm going to sleep better at night. So I'm going to be more comfortable. So I bring that up just because I end up finding myself a lot of times in conversations with my peers and others within the industry. And then even talking to clients and doing some of the events that we're doing like right now and live events, I've learned so much over the years that it's not necessarily about the black and white.
Sure.
And a lot of people who don't sit with clients or haven't sat with thousands of clients over the course of their careers, they just don't get it, right? They don't get it. It's not just about the math. It's not about the black and white. It's about sitting across from that family when things don't go as you planned or they do go as you planned and having that conversation. Right. And knowing it's personal, it's who you are. And it's, you trust us, you entrust us to make the best decisions we can for you. And it's not about the numbers, right? It's about what makes your family more secure, feel more secure, and what puts you into a better position to enjoy everything you've worked your entire life for. And at its root, that's what we do here. That's who we are.
Yeah, and exactly to the idea of like there's no wrong choices, right? Because that is a right choice, right? That has a measurable benefit, even if it's in the short term versus
Those of them
the long
can
term.
be measurably right.
Exactly. All of them are measurably right? Well, not all, but at least those two choices are measurably correct, right? It's just what are you prioritizing? Is it a number or is it your peace of mind, which is just as valuable for all of our clients?
Bring it to Roth conversions and tax planning.
Sure.
So I may have a valid or invalid, whatever the case may be, concern about taxes being a lot higher in the future.
Right.
So I may be willing to do a bit more Roth conversion today,
Sure.
which then I don't have those dollars I otherwise would have that I paid tax on because I sent that money to the government. But you know what? I'm going to sleep better because if taxes go up, if there's means testing to Social Security, I want to take care of my kids, my grandkids. I'm going to sleep better because I paid a little bit more today, even though I don't have as much money to grow. And so on paper, it may not quite be. My net worth may be incrementally less because I made this decision. But you know what? On a scale of how do I feel, this is where I'm at. Like I'm so much better here.
As long as that makes you successful, we're happy at the end of the day. Right?
Yeah, and that's why we call it the retirement success plan is because we don't define what is success for you. You define that. It's just our job to help you
Identify
navigate
Exactly.
the finances, create the visibility. All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I feel like that was kind of my closing statement because that is like in its most pure form why I do what I do. But Ed, I'll throw it to you, and then Eric, just any closing words, thoughts, insights that you'd like to put a little cherry on top of tonight's live stream?
I'll reiterate one thing, and that is we've talked about it a lot here today, and that is art and science. The financial planning is as much the numbers. I like to describe it as left brain versus right brain. When it comes to, let's just keep it pretty high level here, when we're talking about our client's allocation, we'll look at the plan and the numbers will say, and I'll stick with your example. If you're in a position to where you're going to earn on average 6.5%, I always put the disclaimer, how often will you get 6.5% over the next 20 years? Probably never. But you'll probably be 14 some years and maybe some negatives along the way. But as long as you're averaging that 6.5%, okay, that's the math. But we want you to be able to stick to the plan. Mm-hmm. And so if and when we have, I'm sorry, not if, but when we have a pullback on the market, regardless of what that is, now the right brain kicks in, the behavioral finance side of it kicks in. Are you going to sleep at night knowing that your portfolio is down, even if it's within the limits, to where you're still not going to have a problem remaining retired, but at the same time, you're not sleeping at night? Now emotions take over and maybe bad decisions are made.
Domino
effect. All of a sudden, and we hear it all the time here. We saw it in 22. We saw it during COVID. Yeah, just get me out, quote unquote, stop the bleeding. Sure. And we had, I think I was pretty proud of this back then, Troy. We had like one client out of all of us that was like just heck bent, if you will, and said, no, get me out.
It's the only one I remember, one.
And I think if memory serves, and I'm not making fun of them, I think they did it when the market bottomed, as in that day. But neither here or there. We had to talk to our clients, revisit the plan, but then it also presented a couple of opportunities. Two, one, hey, we should probably revisit the allocation again, because if you're experiencing this now, it's not going to be the only time. It may not be COVID, but it'll probably be something else. As Chris says, recession in the U.S., 30% down on the S&P 500, historically speaking. This is an opportune time to be looking at Roth conversions. No one was thinking of that. The markets are down. You may not be down 30%.
Back in COVID.
Back during COVID. The markets were down. This is a fantastic opportunity. So I'm not trying to take your attention off what we're experiencing. One, let me show you that your retirement's still on track. If it's not on track, well, let's show what we can do to get it back on track.
Yeah, sure. Even if you just isolate the equity portion of the portfolio, a substantial event, right? The markets are down, escapes me, but 30-40%, I feel like, within a couple of months or a couple of weeks there.
33% in 4 weeks.
33%.
Yeah, that was dramatic.
Let's take advantage of that opportunity.
Let's take advantage of that.
What was it? Eric Holder, Obama's former attorney general, never let a crisis go to waste. And this was an economic crisis where we could take advantage of it from a retirement planning standpoint, and we did.
And then a year later, again, hindsight being 2020, clients were afraid. We were having to still pump on the brakes because they were seeing this dramatic increase in a short period of time. You and Chris, did 4 videos on COVID alone. It's still on the YouTube channel.
Still on YouTube.
And Chris was saying, we're going to see a V-shaped recovery here, just like the Spanish
flu. We felt
flu.
it was going to be a V-shaped recovery.
Yeah, at the time. And so it ended up being correct.
In hindsight.
And then clients were just like, oh, my God, this is the best thing ever. Like, hey, this isn't going to happen forever as well.
No, we're never ever going to be 100% right for sure. But something like that, it was pretty clear to us what was likely to happen. But it's interesting you bring that up because it coincides the planning with the investment side of our firm. And for the clients who took advantage of it that were with us at that time and we were doing this for you, I'm not sure they quite appreciate how much wealth was actually created during that 2-month span.
Right.
But taking those tax-infested dollars from the IRA and then, they were invested in stocks and the market went down.
They were down, yeah.
But you know what? We said, we believe in this economy, we believe in this market, and we don't believe it's going to stay down forever. Let's go ahead and move these over to this tax-free place. Let's pay tax on these assets at depressed values. And our belief is they're going to appreciate in the future and turn into tax-free growth for you inside that Roth. And it turns out that that's what happened.
Yep.
But that's what planning is. But it's also what opportunistic planning is.
And I'll elaborate again. And I was very.
This is I threw it to you as like some final words for a cherry on
this
top.
Is just,
and you have really brought up some good memories.
But I remember a year later talking to clients, and here's the performance. And let's keep the numbers simple and say they did a Roth conversion, and the tax bill on that was $20,000. 1 year later, their Roths had appreciated so much, it covered the tax in less than 12 months.
And then now look at where those tax-free dollars are 5 years later.
Correct. Again, that's hindsight. It's always 2020. That won't necessarily always be the
And it
case.
doesn't always work like that. It
No,
very
of
well
course
could have
not.
went the other way, and very well sometimes could go the other way.
But that's the benefit of having an internal investment management team.
So cherry on top for you, Eric.
Cherry on top for me is more of an encouragement to everyone that's listening and all of our clients, people that are not clients, people doing it yourself. The only reason you're tuning in to a conversation like this is because you have made some right choices, right? You have the problem of the taxes that you're looking for in retirement and everything. And so to our recovering engineer client, because that was a really important, that was awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Is
See why I chuckled whenever you were talking.
yeah,
there. Apologies.
it's take a step back a little bit from this whole idea of optimization a little bit, right? And make the choices that are going to drive you in retirement, right? Because realistically, Troy, you're a golfer, right? I'm a golfer. We're going to play a lot of golf in our retirement when we get there, right? Is that the most optimal to our budget at the end of the day? No, probably not. One of the most expensive hobbies that you can have out there, right? And so there's going to be choices that we make all the time that are not the most optimal. But I can definitely make an optimal plan around knowing that you're going to spend X amount of dollars on golf a year, right?
Like that.
And so the idea that do what you want in retirement, right? It's all about having the successful plan first. This tax stuff is just a cherry on top. And like I mentioned, those layers of decision-making points, we can build something around that, right? It's a combination of choices that make a right outcome. They don't all have to be the perfect choices, but that's what it is, right? Just a combination. So,
And so I'll leave you with this because Eric has inspired me here. Ed, you've just motivated me. But you know what? So many of the people we work with, they're going to be okay regardless.
Yep.
Right? They're not going to. It's not a matter of life or death, financially speaking.
correct.
But it's, the people I think that appeal most to this message are the ones that are passionate about getting this stuff right and optimizing. But at the end of the day, if you're doing this yourself or if you're doing this with somebody else, ultimately what we want to do is help you understand the impact of different decisions that you're making. So most of you can make a lot of bad decisions and make some mistakes from the financial side and still be okay. And you have every right to do so. Right. And this isn't make or break, life or death, financial planning information. But I think many of you get it. Let's do this right. We get, this is my money. I worked hard for it. And if you guys at Oak Harvest are doing something that my current advisor is incapable or unable or isn't talented enough to do, maybe I want to make the transition. Maybe I want to make the switch. So either way, we hope we've provided you some education and enlighten you tonight as far as the interrelationship between taxes and assets and Social Security and the nuance of retirement and the varying goals and objectives that different families have. So this has been tremendous for us. I hope it's been enlightening for you. And I want to thank you very, very much for tuning in as always. And we wish you an excellent night, and we will see you next month for another financial planning discussion.